subscriber to the Witching Hour. If I look a little off, it might be because analyzing background details in movies for the past 10 years of my life has broken me. I'm often asked if doing this kind of work has changed the way I watch movies, even casually, and yes, it has. I cannot watch any film without staring at the dark corners in the background. I cannot help but look for every devil in every detail. And if I stare for long enough, I'll start to see a demon who's not even there. I am cursed. Well, that's what scares me the most about scary movies. Not the jump scares, not the blood, not the aura-farming clowns, but the great big nothing. The inky abyss beyond the frame where no discernible light provides any shape or border or contrast. It's in that uncertainty where our minds begin playing make-believe, desperate to trace a familiar smile into just about anything, because the alternative to a demonic presence lurking in those shadows is an even more frightening thought, that perhaps we are actually just alone. I'm Erik Voss, and as we embark upon New Rockstars' new channel of horror movie video essays, The Witching Hour, my first selection was the 2024 neon horror Longlegs, a film directed by Osgood Perkins, son of psycho actor Anthony Perkins. And I love this film not because of Nicolas Cage's unhinged performance or the mystery structure of the film, but rather for another aspect you may be familiar with if you've watched other videos about Longlegs: the hidden devil sightings. The film concerns a series of murder-suicides in Oregon, coordinated by a figure who names himself Longlegs, who serves what he calls the man downstairs. FBI agent Lee Harker investigates these crimes, exhibiting a kind of clairvoyance to decode the encryptions Longlegs leaves behind. But we learn Harker herself has a personal connection to Longlegs through her mother Ruth, having used birthday gifts of dolls with mysterious spheres inside of their heads that causes the fathers of these families to commit familicide, leaving the daughters behind as witnesses as the dolls' spheres and the demonic presence inhabiting them continue to filter their memories. This includes Lee Harker herself. Now, Osgood Perkins has said that the doll plot device was actually inspired in part by a theory about the death of JonBenet Ramsey, saying, quote, "The murder took place approaching Christmas, and one present that the parents had gotten for JonBenet was a life-size replica doll of herself, wearing one of her pageant dresses. It was in a cardboard box in the basement, 15 feet from where she was killed, and there was something so insane about that, I'd cataloged it away." That influence, along with Nicolas Cage's portrayal of Longlegs with what some have called a queer-coded performance, reminding many of the complicated relationship viewers have with Ted Levine's role as Buffalo Bill and Jonathan Demme's The Silence of the Lambs, have all really colored this film with a certain pop psychology that is clearly very aware of the art that preceded it. But with many modern horror films like this, at least since the Blair Witch Project, the marketing for the film, and what you could call the film's general aura, overtake the film's narrative itself. For many viewers, that aura is embodied in the form of the devil sightings, and finding devils is something that this idiotic YouTube host has quite a bit of experience with. Throughout the film, Osgood Perkins inserts several subtle appearances by the devil, who fades in and out of visibility for a few seconds at a time in the dark shadows of key moments. He's tall, cloaked, and has the long curved horns and protruding ears of a goat. And some of us might be curious to know what's underneath the cloak. In the year and a half since the film has released, various people online have spotted exactly 10 of these. Now, oddly, in a promo released by Neon on July 22nd, 2024, the video description teased that the director hid more than 15 appearances throughout the film. Originally, while making this video, I set out to find those missing 5 that no one else could find. But even when our editor, Joshua Stephen Hurd, kindly made a super brightened cut of the movie that I watched several times, I can confirm there are only 10 sightings. So why did Neon say there were 15? To drive people like me crazy? Too late! I believe someone in the marketing department asked the director how many shots in the movie had subtle VFX work added to make the devil visible. And this director, the way every small budget filmmaker in the post-production phase of a film sees their movie, reported the total number of devil VFX shots. And he combined the 10 horned devil sightings with these other VFX shots in which the devil's creepy face is superimposed over the black veiled doll heads, of which there are about 5 of these. These, to me, are the creepiest VFX shots, because the expression of the faces and the wide open snake eyes evoke the demonic faces that William Friedkin spliced in throughout The Exorcist. We also know that some of the 10 horned devil shots were ones Perkins added in post-production, so there may have just been a few others that they were considering compositing into shots before ultimately deciding to leave it at 10. Some say there also must be exactly 10 sightings as a reference to the passage from the Book of Revelation that Lee Harker deciphered and later quoted to Carter and Browning.
And I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns he wore 10 crowns.
But as I was doing this paranoid search, I began to ask a different question. Why? Why does the devil present himself this way throughout the film, in barely noticeable sightings? Unless you have a wonderful Joshua Stephen Hurd in your life who exports max brightness cuts of movies for you that you would only be able to see in that circumstance. If the devil is this brilliant, a master manipulator, an ancient evil who has outsmarted and evaded presumably generations of clever mortals, why does he now use a goofy glam rocker in the 1990s in Oregon to do work sloppy enough to get caught by FBI agents to eventually get those devilish deeds brought to light? I would understand if using Longlegs was a brilliant red herring, a cover, so that the authorities and the media would assume Longlegs was working alone and echoing the oft-repeated refrain of "the devil made me do it" that no one would take seriously. But part of the devil's plan in this movie was to have Longlegs openly talk about the devil on FBI internal recordings for the patterned supernatural crimes to continue thereafter without Dale Cobble, leaving behind a trustworthy witness in Lee Harker to confirm that the devil was indeed real. That, plus the evidence from the medical examiner who discovered the sphere inside the camera family doll, and the mysterious frequency emitted from within that drove Don Draper's daughter so crazy she made good on her promise to jump out of a window and form the penultimate death day in the inverted triangle pattern. So why did the devil bless this mess? Is this another example of a fun but implausible supernatural horror story where some demonic force's plan ultimately boils down to it revealing itself to everyone when the smarter move would have been to stay hidden? Does the devil only appear throughout this movie as an aesthetic choice to stir the viewer's paranoia and tension, or to perhaps give the marketing folks at Neon something to sell the movie with? Both could be true, but I think there's also a narrative and a thematic reason that many of us missed with this film. The devil wants to be seen. This is not a devil who pulled the greatest trick by making the world believe he doesn't exist. This is a devil who proudly declares, "Look upon my works, ye mighty in despair." It's also a devil who says, "Fuck the feds." In this video essay, I will go through each of these devil sightings to explain what the man downstairs' true plan is, how Longlegs as a film is not what many think it is, a version of The Silence of the Lambs with actual satanic forces at play, but rather a story of an evil, immortal artist manipulating humanity's power structures to craft a bloody piece of pop art. And this video will not aim to do what New Rockstars does and provide a comprehensive list of Easter eggs and interesting missable details throughout a movie. This video is not a breakdown, and I will be leaving out some specific horror homages that came up in this film. Instead, I will use this opportunity to do a video essay with a specific mission, and that mission is to explain why the devil makes these appearances throughout the film of Longlegs. So let's begin with the first devil sighting in the film. One, when Harker goes through the evidence of the Longlegs killer in the FBI office early in the film, about 16 minutes in, the devil's horned form fades into view for a few seconds to the left of the American flag in the background. As he does in most other sightings of the film, he fades in and out of view, staying on screen for just a few seconds, and takes the form of a shadow. Here's what Osgood Perkins told Vulture about this particular appearance. Quote, "It's the first time that she's engaging with these crimes. Her analytical mind is being turned on by the evidence, and she's kind of clicking it into action. And so it made sense that the devil would be with her as her chaperone, as her coach, as her date." Haha. And when it came to being beside the American flag, Perkins said, quote, "I mean, you know, probably not much more needs to be said about that." So we could interpret this as Osgood Perkins' way of saying, this is the moment the devil begins to present himself to Harker's periphery and to us the viewers, as he only enters the mortal plane to influence Harker in this investigation. He wants Harker to solve this case, which is odd considering most other demonic forces and most other horror films work real hard to stay hidden from any law enforcement and instead appear to the isolated, the vulnerable, the young, people who could be discounted as crazy or dishonest. Also, leading with the first devil sighting being him kinda hugging the American flag. Well, once you do see it, it forms a rather unambiguous statement about deals our country and its leaders have made with the man downstairs.
No, I'm not fucking Satan.
But to be clear, since this movie was set in the 90s, and we do see President Bill Clinton's photo on the walls, maybe it's a bit about him too. Look, they're all on the client list. 2. The next devil appearance comes when Harker returns home and looks out into the mist about 27 minutes into the film. This is the first time we see Longlegs in the present day in the film, and our eye is drawn to him, but hovering in the mist over his head is the horned devil. He's there for a few seconds and then dissipates. Another important visual cue for this shot, Perkins preceded it a few minutes earlier with an empty shot of the grounds to form a kind of baseline control shot before the creepy visual would now be added, so that our eye is more likely to see something odd in frame, but giving us two things to look at so we don't see the second thing right away. Perkins employs this shot composition nearly every time the devil appears, so that's another way we can look at the other shots. Perkins told Vulture about this sighting that it made sense that the devil would tag along, quote, kind of an I'll come too sort of vibe. Perkins is basically saying that the devil doesn't want Longlegs to get all the credit and all the attention for what's ultimately the devil's master plan. That means the devil is an egomaniac, but also the fact that Longlegs and the devil are tag teaming this sighting is definitely a tactic they use in the scene to form their next move, the reason they're here, bringing us to number 3. After checking out the grounds, Harker turns to see Longlegs sauntering through her house, delivering the birthday card for her to decode. And as she does so, realizing it's a threat about her mother, there's another sighting of the devil, very hard to see, in the darkened doorway to the left, just for a second or two. You can only see it because Perkins showed Harker in this framing for several shots where the contents of the room beyond are visible, but now it's all in shadow. So our eye knows something is off about this shot. And then we see the horns. Perkins said this about this particular sighting, quote, she's going a step deeper into the case. Now the birthday card is coming to her. The cipher is coming to her. She's being initiated into the next ring or the next level, the next circle. And it's like the devil is there to indicate crossing a threshold. So it's important to note about these two sightings in the scene. They all center around Longlegs' threats to Harker's mother, Ruth, who calls in during the scene, a clue that Ruth has been an active participant in these murders for years. But the way Perkins describes the devil being there again in a form of encouragement to Harker, a chaperone, a date, keep that in mind. The 4th devil sighting comes about 37 minutes in. Harker is studying books about the occult, and she traces the calendar dates of the murders to decode Longlegs' algorithm of an inverted triangle. By the way, on those books are some shapes that some have tried to argue makes another devil sighting, looking somewhat like the curved devil horns, but I don't buy it. Harker feels some eyes on her and looks down an aisle toward a window, and the devil is clearly standing outside. Whereas in the past instances, the devil hid himself behind Harker or positioned himself so that our eye was drawn toward Longlegs standing beneath him, now the devil clearly wants to be seen. This after hours library has most of the lights turned off, but here there's one random light turned on at the end of this aisle, which invites Harker to look out of this window to see the devil. This sighting is triggered by Harker making the most important discovery yet. The inverted triangle of the dates of the murders, which for the first time in history presents the blueprint of the devil's master plan. The fifth devil sighting comes in a scene without Lee Harker. About 55 minutes in, Longlegs, aka Dale Cobble, sits on his mattress in the basement reading The Golden Bough, a comparative study of mythology and religion by anthropologist Sir James George Fraser. When we cut to Dale's point of view looking across the basement, we see the devil fading into view in the corner with a hint of a growl. Osgood Perkins wants Dale's abode to feel like Buffalo Bill's home from The Silence of the Lambs, with hints that Dale, before becoming a satanic serial killer, was a failed glam rock musician who over the years disfigured his face with plastic surgery and still wears hints of makeup. That's why Longlegs dresses the way he does, with some eccentric mannerisms and an overexpressive sing-songy tone. The fact that the devil chose a failed artist as his minion in this great work is an important clue. Dale goes from failing at a music career to the craft of doll making, as the devil works to use all of these props in his grand display. The sixth devil sighting comes when Harker visits her mother at Carter's request to see if she can remember anything about that trespasser who creeped her out the day before her 9th birthday. Harker looks at the basement door, a bug crawls out, and she gets another clairvoyant flash of snakes, and then, bam! The door leading outside now has the devil framed in it. According to Perkins, this one wasn't scripted, but they added it during post-production. Quote, when we were looking at it in the editing room, we saw the shape back there, and we sort of said, oh, this is one of those moments where she's where another layer of the onion's being pulled off, and she's getting a glimpse at a deeper understanding. She's at the fucking door. And so for the devil to be there to sort of again monitor her progress and kind of encourage her along the way, it felt like a good place. Since Longlegs is living in the basement of this house, the bug crawling out of this door means things are decrepit down there. The devil wants to say, just like I'm on the outside of this door looking in at you, so too are you just on the other side of the door you need to go through to find out the truth. The seventh devil sighting comes just a few minutes after this, when Harker goes back up to her childhood bedroom and sees her old chest. When she suddenly flashes back to being a young girl, in this shot, you can see the devil to the left of the frame, standing in the shadows. In this shot, Perkins also pointed to the little red piano and said that originally in the script, the red piano was a bigger thematic motif throughout the film, but they removed it from the final cut. I believe this is going to be a connection between the importance of artistic expression in the film, Dale Cobble's past as a musician, and perhaps some songs that young Lee Harker would have been singing. The eighth devil sighting comes during Harker and Browning's visit to Ruth's house, and when Harker goes inside to confront her mother, surprise! Ruth bleeds in with the green background and hides in plain sight as she steps forward outside the car with a shotgun to blow Browning's head off. The moment Harker hears the gunshot, she steps to the right of the frame, and in the distant background, we see the devil for a moment before the shot cuts away. The devil is particularly proud in this moment because he's so close to completing his artistic display now that his flashy puppet, Longlegs, has killed himself in federal police custody while shouting, "Hail Satan" for everyone to hear, even directly into their camera. And so the devil's real operator is now activated to complete the final day of this inverted triangle. The ninth appearance is the most obvious of the film, as it's when all is revealed and Osgood Perkins wants the audience to fully understand the devil's role within this grand manipulation, including his link to see Lee Harker from a young age. We learn that on the day Dale Cobble approached young Lee, he essentially set up shop in their home basement after tying up and threatening Ruth and using that basement as his workshop to build more dolls that Ruth would then deliver to homes of birthday girls as gifts from the church, she said. We see a shot of young Lee from her room and the devil fades into view behind her. Osgood Perkins said that this was one of the few devil sightings that were actually included in the original script, which is why it's framed so perfectly. Perkins said it was probably one of the first ones, if not the first one, that we built to see what it would look like. It's just showing up in a picture what the movie is also giving the devil an almost parental presence in her little room behind her. And that brings us to the 10th and final devil sighting.
Come, sit. Sit.
Like John Doe's master plan in David Fincher's Seven, the final stroke of this plan gets violently personal with the family of one of the investigators hunting him. I am haunted by the little detail of Agent Carter looking out past the camera before he shuts the door, with a hint of a smile that we now know is him kind of nodding into the devil that is standing right there where we are. From a practical standpoint, the devil is meant to hide the reflection of the camera that would have been seen on the window glass. The Wachowskis did a similar technique with Morpheus's jacket reflected on a doorknob in The Matrix. Osgood Perkins considers this shot the best of all of his hidden devil appearances. He told Vulture, quote, "It's fun, it's scary, it's punctuation." Punctuation! The final decisive note at the end of a song. The director said he considers this the willful cameo by the devil, quote, ushering in the last movement of his opera that he staged. Perkins also said that this opera is all centered around Lee Harker, a girl that the devil selected from a young age and, one could argue, blessed her or cursed her with the ability to see uncanny connections that would fast-track her career as a data analyst for the FBI that he could one day use to manipulate with this maneuver. And notice that in this movie, Harker does not win in the final event. She was left safely behind at home while Ruth made it to the Carter household. Her objective was to stop any further deaths, and she failed. She rushed in to try to stop it, but she was too late. Carter kills his wife Anna. Harker kills Carter. The daughter Ruby watches it all happen. And then Harker has to kill her mother Ruth. Perkins said, quote, "The devil in this movie wants the worst possible thing to happen to an individual. And for Harker, having to kill her own mother, quote, is about as bad as a person's day can get." Given Osgood Perkins' family history with horror characters best known for mommy issues, there is a very real influence here that Perkins discussed in a 2024 interview with People magazine. His father, Anthony Perkins, did not publicly discuss his sexuality, but along with some documented history of his lifestyle, his son Osgood did say in this interview, quote, "I grew up in a household with a very famous visible father who was living two lives, at least, and was a closeted homosexual or bisexual man." And Osgood Perkins said that his mother, Barry Berenson, hid this about Anthony Perkins to the Perkins children and tried to shield them from it. And Perkins went on to say, "Your mother can protect you from a truth that she thinks is unsavory, and then you just build out a crazy movie around that." So Oz Perkins shared all of this, presumably to give audiences some insight into the relationship dynamic between Lee and Ruth in this movie. Anthony Perkins passed away in 1992, and a pretty wild historical footnote here, Anthony Perkins' wife and Oz's mother, Barry Berenson, died on September 11th, 2001 as one of the passengers of American Airlines Flight 11, which flew into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. I know, yeah, I share all of this to give you some context on the history that shaped this filmmaker who crafted this particular story. Longlegs, of course, is not a one-to-one confessional allegory of Osgood Perkins' life or his relationship with his parents, the way Lexi in Euphoria's play is about fucking us.
Wait, is this fucking play about us?
But all this information does offer some insight into the core emotional truth that Oz Perkins would then add his supernatural elements on top of. The devil wanted to take one of God's angels and to torture it into doing all of these dark deeds. When Longlegs first met young Lee, he called her an angel, as he would often do with his young targets.
"What day is your birthday, little angel?"
And later, at the FBI, Dale's ramblings implied a link between Harker's surname and Hark the Herald Angels Sing.
Where do I see Lee? Harker, the Herald Angels Sing.
And so in the final minutes, when Harker runs out of bullets when it comes time to shoot Ruby's doll to free Ruby of the spell, it doesn't happen. We don't know if Harker ever finishes this task. The movie just ends with her telling Ruby that they need to leave, as she glares up at the doll with Longlegs' 24-minute long happy birthday song from the FBI plays over it, and we don't get a final gunshot. Only this.
Hail Satan.
So why does the devil go through this exercise? Because the devil of this movie is a narcissistic artist. He's not trying to spread chaos wherever he can. His evil comes in how precisely his plan is carried out, even if the materials he uses to craft this work are themselves a bit chaotic. The setting of the mid-1990s was, for Osgood Perkins, a reference to the death of JonBenet Ramsey in Christmas 1996 and the investigation that followed. But there was another historically relevant shift in America during these years that also, I believe, informs the devil devil's blueprint of this movie. The fact that the devil is using the FBI and first appears alongside an American flag in this movie, I interpret as a taunt that the devil is using the American government's police authority to deliver this master stroke. Many historians attribute the transformative work in behavioral science by the FBI, led by Agent John E. Douglas throughout the 1970s and 80s, that led to a complete rethinking of the minds of serial killers. Douglas interviewed notable killers like David Berkowitz, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Ed Kemper, Charles Manson, and various others, and his profiling approach in part led to the arrest of Wayne Williams in the Atlanta child murders of 1979 to 1981. Jonathan Groff's character, Holden Ford, in David Fincher's Netflix series Mindhunter is based on John E. Douglas. Douglas retired in 1995, and I think that year also inspired the choice to set this movie in the mid-90s. The devil wants to use the FBI and his operatic work of art as a way of saying, oh, mid-90s America, you think you cracked the code of evil? Think again.
Hail Satan.
The devil's ultimate goal is to craft a compelling piece of media to insult and humiliate the FBI with irrefutable proof that there exists some real tangible evil in this world that cannot be reductively explained away with human behavioral science. And assuming he was successful in that aim, the FBI would certainly be too proud to ever release that work of art to the public. Too proud and too fearful of who else that might inspire. So why does the devil appear throughout Longlegs? So that in the future, when evildoers claim, the devil made me do it, the powers that be will believe it. And I believe Longlegs and films like it are cursed. That will be the lens through which I will analyze horror movies on this channel. And I'll warn you, counter-hexing cursed movies like this is not always fun. And so I highly recommend you also sample the great work of Jessica Clemons and Gina Ippolito on this channel for very different and in many ways better horror movie analyses. The question now is, did you see the devil hiding in this video? Hail Satan!